What's up everyone, it's Underdog MLB and welcome to part 2 of 3 of my Legends Wishlist series. I want to start off here with actually an apology because it has been over 2 months since I posted part 1 of this series with the 90 to 95 overall Legends, and I promised that I'd have all 3 parts up by the end of winter break. Well, it's now March and I'm just now dropping part 2. I am making a promise though that I will have part 3 of this video up within 2 weeks at the latest. If this is the first video of this series that you're watching, go ahead and watch part 1 as well. It's going to be up in the top right hand corner. As you guys know, SDS doesn't add only 99 overall worthy legends into the game each year. That makes it up with some top tier guys and some players that aren't endgame but are still fun to use for other purposes. For part 2 today, I'm going to be going over the 10 legends I'd most like to see that are in the second tier, meaning players that I think could get around a 96 to 98 overall card in Diamond Dynasty. Let's get started. The first new legend in this tier that I want to see next year is second baseman Jeff Kent. Kent was kind of a late bloomer, sitting around league average offensively for the first several years of his career, but he had his breakout season at age 30 in 1998, posting his first 30-homer campaign, hitting .297 and sporting a 142 OPS+. Kent went on to win the NL MVP 2 seasons later, putting up career highs in batting average at .334 and an OPS at 1,021. He also topped his career high with 33 home runs, though he would go on to hit 37 in 2002. Kent's power numbers don't jump off the page at first, as he was more of a contact hitter, finishing his career with a .290 batting average. However, Kent is actually the all-time leader in home runs among second basemen, though Robinson Cano may break that record soon. Kent was not the greatest fielder, which may hold him back from being an endgame card, but if you're looking at it from a purely offensive standpoint, a 2000 MVP Jeff Kent card would probably be a top 5 second baseman in the game. Next up is Francisco Rodriguez, better known as K-Rod. K-Rod's last year in MLB The Show was The Show 18, which would mean if he were in 21, he would have only a 3-year turnaround time from being an active player to a legend. There's only ever been one player with a 3-year turnaround time, which would be Jimmy Rollins, who was an active player in MLB The Show 17 and returned as a legend in 20. The odds of a player having a 3-year turnaround time is very small, which is why K-Rod is the only such player I included on my list. I know there are other players who retired in 18 that are on a lot of people's wish lists, such as Joe Mauer, David Wright, Adrian Beltre, etc. I went with K-Rod here, but we'll see what happens. K-Rod's prime came from 2004 to 2008, where he had a 12 strikeouts per 9, a 1.15 whip, and a 200 ERA+. In 2008, he set a new single-season record with 62 saves, which is still a record today. He had a really impressive 6.3 hits per 9 during this stretch, but his control was a little shaky. Rodriguez didn't throw particularly hard and had a pretty standard pitch mix, but he did have a bit of a funky delivery, which could throw people off. I think a prime K-Rod from the mid-2000s could be a decent card, provided you can control him. The next player is catcher Roy Campanella. Campy only played for 10 years, but he definitely made an impact during his career. He made 8 All-Star appearances and won 3 MVPs in 1951, 53, and 55. Campy could hit for power, hitting 30-plus homers 4 times in his career, despite never playing more than 144 games in any season. He even topped 40 homers in his 1953 season, in which he also slugged .611. Campanella could also hit for contact, hitting above 300 in each of his 3 MVP seasons, and was patient, walking more times than he struck out in his career. Another nice thing about Campanella is that he should have 99 arm strength, as he led the league in caught stealing in each of his first 5 seasons. Unfortunately, Campanella's playing career was cut short after 10 seasons due to a car accident that happened after the 1957 season, which left him paralyzed. If this accident never happened and Campanella was able to have a longer career, I think he may have ended up being regarded as one of the top 5 catchers of all time. But I still think a Campy card would be a beast in the game, and I'm really hoping we see him next year. The next player on my list is actually already confirmed to be in the game, obviously being Alfonso Soriano. So this one technically isn't a prediction, but he was on the list before yesterday's feature premiere, and I already did research on him for this video, so I'm still going to talk about what I think we can realistically see from him in the game. I guess this is what happens when you make part 1 in December and part 2 in March. As a Cubs fan, I really started watching baseball around the 2011 season, which was when Soriano was really the only good player on the Cubs. He had an impressive combination of power and speed, being one of only 4 players in baseball history to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases in the same season, otherwise known as the 40-40 Club. And Soriano is the only member of the 40-40 Club to have never been linked to PEDs, which makes it even more impressive. Soriano was a good contact hitter earlier in his career, though his average declined as he got older. The one area of Soriano's game that left a lot to be desired was his defense, which will probably hold him back from being a usable card in the endgame. However, he was very versatile, playing second base early in his career and left field in the latter half, so you have multiple options for where to play him. Another fun thing about Soriano was his really wacky batting stance, which at least for me, it's always fun to play with people who have non-traditional batting stances in MLB The Show. Really looking forward to using Alfonso next year. He is definitely someone I will look to get in my lineup by all means possible. The next player on this list is Roy Halladay, obviously having unfortunately passed away in a plane accident 3 years ago. Halladay was one of, if not the best starting pitcher of the 2000s decade, winning Cy Young Awards in 2003 and 2010. In my opinion, Halladay's 2003 campaign was not super impressive. I think the Cy Young Award should have gone to Pedro Martinez that season, but he had many other seasons where he didn't win the Cy Young that I think were actually more impressive. One thing about Halladay that is particularly impressive, considering the area he played in, was that he was a complete workhorse, leading the league in innings pitched 4 times and leading the league in complete games 7 times, including a stretch of 5 consecutive seasons, and ended up with 67 complete games for his career. While not a huge strikeout guy, Halladay did lead the league in strikeout to walk ratio from 2008 to 2011. He finished his career with a 1.31 ERA plus and a 3.39 FIP, and he threw a 4-seam, cutter, curveball, and a changeup, which morphed into a splitter when he went with the Phillies. Out of all the guys in today's video, I think Doc Halladay has the best chance to get a 99, but there are just so many other good legends that I want to see, and I feel like he's probably more likely to get a 98. Either way, I'm really hoping they add him to next year's game. The next player on my list is Brady Anderson, who was an outfielder that played mostly for the Orioles. As of right now, the Orioles don't have any legend outfielders in the game, and while Anderson isn't exactly a household name, I still would like to see him next year. Anderson is well known for his 1996 season, in which he hit a career-high 50 home runs and had a 1.034 OPS. For some context, Anderson's career high up to that point was 21 homers, and he was already a 32-year-old vet. And even more mysteriously, he fell off after that 96 season, hitting no more than 24 home runs in any season for the rest of his career. The accepted story is that he started doing PEDs in 96, then suddenly stopped for whatever reason. There isn't actually any evidence of that. In the past, SDS has been very against steroid users in the game, but they may be easing up on that approach since Gary Sheffield and David Ortiz, who were both connected to PEDs, were added to the game in 20. I think with someone like Brady, who has no real evidence against him other than pure speculation, wouldn't be that much of a stretch to add to the game. I think Brady could get a nice 95 or 96 All-Star or Prime card based around his 1996 season with a ton of power, decent contact, okay fielding, and pretty good speed since he swiped 21 bags that year and had a career high of 53 steals in 1992. Next up is another relief pitcher, the Bryce Harper choker himself, Jonathan Papelbon. Man, the late 2000s decade had a ton of lights-out relievers in their primes with Joe Nathan, who we talked about last video, Francisco Rodriguez, and now Papelbon. Papelbon's best 2 years came in 2006 and 2007, where in 126.2 innings he allowed just 19 earned runs over 2 years. That is wild. He had an 0.77 whip and a 5.0 hits per 9 during that span, and a strikeouts per 9 rate of 13 in 07. The dude was straight up untouchable. Even after that 07 season, Papelbon was still an elite reliever for the next 8 years, all the way up until 2015. In that span, he had a 164 ERA plus, a 105 whip, and a 9.9 strikeouts per 9. I'm kind of surprised Papelbon retired when he did. His last year was 2016, where he fell to about league average, but he was still only 35 and just 1 year removed from being one of the game's top bullpen arms. Papelbon really only threw 3 pitches, the fastball, the slider, and the splitter, which is probably the biggest downside to having him in the game, but his fastball should hit around 98 miles an hour, so if you can locate your spots with pinpoint pitching, they could be pretty nasty. Up next is a massive power hitter from that 2008 World Series Phillies team, Ryan Howard. I think Howard has a good chance at being in the game next year since we did see Shane Victorino and Jimmy Rollins as new legends in MLB The Show 20, who were both key pieces from that 08 Phillies team. Howard's best season came in 2006 where he hit 58 home runs, 149 RBIs, had a .313 batting average, and a 1.084 OPS, all career highs, and won the NL MVP. From 06 to 09, Ryan Howard had 198 home runs, and was probably a top 10 power hitter in baseball history if we're talking about just pure raw power. Unfortunately, Howard couldn't sustain his success for a long period of time, as he never topped 25 homers from 2012 on, although this may have been accelerated by injuries. Howard is basically going to be like David Ortiz, a lefty first baseman who we are using strictly as a power bat. Howard couldn't run, stealing no more than 1 base in every season with the exception of a strange outlier year in 2009 where he stole... Hold up. Ryan Howard stole 8 bases in 2009. Has someone been messing with the baseball reference page? Howard was also a poor defender and struck out a ton. But as we all know in this game, power is king, so Ryan Howard would be a super fun card to use. Next on my list is recent Hall of Famer Mike Mussina. Mussina never had any standout years as he never won a Cy Young, but finished in the top 5 6 times in his career and was the model of consistency. From 1995 to 2003, Mussina pitched 200 innings every single year and almost every year turned in a season with an ERA around 350, a whip around 115, and about 200 strikeouts. I think Mussina would definitely be in line for a signature card since he never really had a single standout year to highlight. Mussina threw a pretty typical pitch mix of fastball, slider, curveball, changeup, and the occasional splitter. He threw in the mid-90s in his prime, but his velo dropped to the high 80s in his later career. I think, like with Brady Anderson, the Orioles are very shallow as far as legends go, especially in the starting pitching department with pretty much only Jim Palmer, so I'm hoping for a potential Mussina ad next year. And the final player in Tier 2 for me is going to be Kirby Puck, a center fielder for the Twins who played in the 80s and 90s. Puckett was a true 5-tool player. He hit over 308 out of his 12 seasons and led the AL in hits 4 times. He was also a solid power hitter, topping out at 31 home runs in 1986 and 45 doubles in 1989. Puckett won 6 Gold Gloves in his career, all coming between 86 and 92, and he stole 21 bags in 85. As you can see, Puckett could really do it all, which resulted in him getting nominated to 10 consecutive All-Star games from 86 to his final season in 1995. Puckett looked like he was as strong as ever in the 1995 season, finishing with a 130 OPS plus at the age of 35, but in the 1996 spring training he lost sight in one of his eyes and never played another Major League game. What he did in his career was enough for him to get in the Hall of Fame, but he looked like he wasn't slowing down, and if he stayed healthy for another 5 years or so, I think he could have been regarded as a borderline top 10 outfielder of all time. Even more tragically, he died in 2006 of a stroke at the age of 45. I think Puckett should be a near endgame player in MLB The Show. The question is whether his tool set will get him a 99 overall, or his lack of longevity will cause him to end up as a 98. Either way, I think Puckett would be an absolute beast if he is added next year. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and are looking forward to the finale where I talk about the 10 legends I want to see who are locks to get 99 overalls. As I said, I'm hoping to get part 3 out in the next 2 weeks. As always, there are so many different players that can fit into this Tier 2 talent level that I didn't mention today. So be sure to tell me in the comments which players I left out today that you would like to see in next year's game. Thank you guys for watching the end today, and I'll see you guys later.